You were never meant to carry this alone. You were never meant to carry the emotional temperature of the room, the temper tantrums of people that don't think you should make mistakes, not the overfunctioning of an entire family, not the unspoken expectations of an entire institution. Carrying this alone is not noble. It's how patriarchy and religious respectability preserve themselves. It was a Sunday morning and I was already vibrating under my skin. Things were not going well around the 18-month mark of this call that I was at that was pretty dysfunctional. Apparently, there had been a typo in our recent church newsletter, a misprint. That was not a huge mistake, and it was also not my mistake. I was told initially when I was hired to definitely keep my hands off the newsletter project because some congregants loved that. It was their pet project. And all I did was submit my newsletter article to go on the front page and leave the rest alone, which is what I did. But as soon as I started wandering about the sanctuary, checking in on people, following up, one of the church couples called me over to the corner where they usually sat. And the way that I positioned my body in order to speak with them, my preaching robe basically blocked the view of them to the rest of the sanctuary. And the husband, no greeting, no eye contact, just started this sharp whisper yelling accusation about how serious this oversight was and about our protocols and how this was unacceptable and how could I be so stupid. And this wasn't rage. And he was whisper yelling, and yet his face was purple and the, vein in his forehead was definitely ready to pop out. He wasn't mad. This was like surgical, whispered violence in a way that no one else could see or hear. And this was the kind of violence that doesn't bruise your skin, but it does attack your sense of self. And I automatically went into my freeze mode, as I do when I was under attack. And I smiled and I nodded and apologized for something that I hadn't done. And I just been, following instructions. And then I turned and walked to the pulpit while my body was still trying to metabolize the shame and the anger and the threat that I had just been under. And I had to lead worship and shook through the entire service. And I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I didn't collapse, but I will never forget how I was gripping the pulpit like it was the only thing tethering me to the planet. And I remember thinking, this is what it means to pretend to be safe in a space that only loves to beat you up. If you can relate to any of that in your life, then coming up, why your nervous system starts dissociating under low volume assault, and why high functioning people ignore the signs until they can't. If this sounds like something that you should listen to, and I think you should, then this is your episode. Let's go.
I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes, highly anxious people pleaser turned master certified professional life coach. Learning to manage my brain was so life-changing for me that I got certified so that I could teach these incredible evidence-based practices to you. Are you ready for massive change? Let's go.
Hey friends, welcome to the Art of Managing Your Brain. I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's break down what actually happened that morning. You see, this wasn't about a typo. It was about control, about an unspoken rule being forced in a system. Don't be human. Don't make mistakes. Don't lead with anything less than perfection. And if you do, you will get publicly humiliated in private. This is how systems maintain power without raising their voice. Whisper correction, shadow assault, passive reprimand, institutional silence after emotional harm. It doesn't register as violence necessarily. It registers as constructive feedback. So you carry it like it was deserved. But here's the science. Your nervous system doesn't care if it was whispered at or screamed at. What it registers is threat plus no escape. That's why stuff like that happens in public. This is how chronic hypervigilance gets coded into leadership roles, especially for women. But before we go further, let me just remind you that this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. We're super excited that they are sponsoring some of our episodes this month. And since it is Mental Health Awareness Month, now is the perfect time to give online therapy a try if you've been thinking about it. You can run to my partner link at betterhelp.com/art of. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/art of, ARTOF. And you can grab that 10% off your first month to give online therapy a try. The part nobody tells you about. Your system will start to auto-regulate for environments that routinely discredit your personhood. And that looks like going blank in the middle of a sentence, losing time, numbing out while attempting competence, forgetting entire parts of conversations and still responding appropriately. You think you're holding it together, but what you're doing is dissociating in plain sight. And because it works, you're rewarded for it. That's how survival becomes the brand. That's how women end up praised for emotional labor, often unpaid, that's actually doing self-harm. Composure is a trauma role sometimes. Calm isn't always grounded. Sometimes calm is just the mask your system learned to wear when it realized no one was coming to help. There's a cost to being the person who never loses it. It teaches everyone around you that you don't need care. That was a problem I had with freezing. It was a blessing in one moment because I didn't, pop off and make things worse. I just had no words. So I would stare and nod and smile and, try not to lose it. But at the same time, when I didn't have the capacity to, open my mouth and share words, people did not understand what was happening in the moment, that I needed care, that I needed support, that I needed backup sometimes. It teaches you that you're only lovable when you're regulated. You're only accepted when you're regulated, when you have the perfect comeback, when you have the perfect thing to say, the perfect boundary. And here's where it gets really dangerous. Eventually, you start regulating for other people. You make your nervous system accommodate other people's comfort rather than your own safety and well-being. That is not resilience. That's internal exile. You're still in the room, but you're watching yourself from the ceiling. You're still functioning, but you're ghosting your very own body. This isn't just mental, it's chemical, it's pattern-based, it's system-taught. And unless you disrupt it, it becomes the only version of you people ever meet. Before we unpack how to address all of this, I just want to remind you that this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. I want to say this plainly. Just because you're still standing doesn't mean you're okay. And just because you're high functioning doesn't mean you aren't unraveling internally. If you're navigating emotional whiplash from environments that praise your performance on one hand, but punish your humanity on the other, you need support. And fortunately, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I want to introduce you to online therapy with BetterHelp. BetterHelp has over 10 years of experience connecting people with licensed therapists who get it. It's flexible, it's private, and it's built for people like us. So just run over to my partner link if you're interested in giving it a try. Visit betterhelp.com/art of to get 10% off your first month to try it out. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/art of, and give it a shot today. So this is what I want you to hear. You were never meant to carry this alone. You were never meant to carry the emotional temperature of the room, the temper tantrums of people that don't think you should make mistakes, not the overfunctioning of an entire family, not the unspoken expectations of an entire institution. Carrying this alone is not noble. It's how patriarchy and religious respectability preserve themselves through your silence. This is how you do the system's work for it. because you self-silence. You're not a container, you're a catalyst, and you are allowed to need help. You are allowed to name harm. You are allowed to be seen in your full emotional truth. You are allowed to take up your space and not be silenced. Systems will not ever give you that permission. People that take advantage of your kindness and your generosity and your compassion, they will never give you permission. Only you can give yourself permission to take up the space that belongs to you already. And that's what self-leadership is. It's not perfection. It's not composure. It's not faking calm, but it's the daily spiritual act of saying, I will not disappear to make you, to make this room, to make an institution more comfortable. And friend, if you are exhausted from silencing yourself, from the reprimand of people that think you shouldn't make mistakes, of the passive aggressiveness, of the sort of shadow reprimand, but in public where you can't do anything about it. If any of this is speaking to you, then I need you to check out my coming masterclass, Burnout Equation. And I will be breaking down my 5-part framework, STORM conditions that lead to complete burnout and how to start interrupting them in real time. So you can always find my masterclasses at charliehornesscoaching.com/store, or you can subscribe to my newsletter that is full of mistakes, but also free weekly tips and early access to all of the things that I have available for you to help you in real time get better at all of this stuff. So I hope you will join us, and you can subscribe at charliehornesscoaching.com/subscribe. And friend, just one more shout out for Mental Health Awareness Month. If you are on the edge of collapse, but you are still functioning, this is your cue to stop pretending you're fine. I'm fine. No, you're not. You know, chaplains know that the term I'm fine is the beginning of a conversation, not the end. We're never fine. And it's time, if you're feeling the weight, if you're feeling the edge, it's time to reach out and get some help. So don't forget about my partner link at betterhelp.com/art of. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/art of, ARTOF, and give online therapy a shot if you really feel like you need support right now. And let me leave you with my final thought. If they didn't witness your harm, they don't get to define your healing. If you are having a hard time pinpointing, getting your finger on the elusiveness of some of the kind of harm that we deal with, the passive aggressiveness, this low volume, this sort of shadow, this sort of in public, yet no one saw it, so you can't react, really bizarre stuff that's happening out there, you need to understand you're not difficult. You're not making it up. You're not overbearing. You're not too much. You're not overreacting. You're not, too sensitive. You're not too emotional. You don't need to get a thicker skin. You don't need to become the opposite of sensitive. Because what is that? The opposite of sensitive is insensitive. Is that really what people are asking you to be? Is that really what you want to be? An insensitive human? No. Sensitivity is a superpower, and you get to own that. You're not difficult. You're not too much. You're not overreacting. You're not dramatic, and you're not too sensitive. I don't think there's a thing in the world that actually is too sensitive, but there's definitely too insensitive. You're just a person who's living through sustained low volume harm, if any of this sounds familiar. And you're allowed to stop carrying this around as if you asked for it, because you didn't. And if this topic speaks to you, then I would recommend watching episode 42, Why You Don't Trust Yourself and How to Rebuild It. This episode is the blueprint for relearning how to be safe inside your own leadership. You can do that. All right, friend, I'm wishing you a fantastic week, and I'll see you next time.